Are you looking for an Explorer deck to play in the upcoming qualifier weekend, or just rank up quick? Welcome to the Attic. Manadad here. It's the channel where we play what is good in Magic, mostly on Arena. Of course, what's good on Arena coming up, qualifier weekend. I probably won't be playing because I'm a busy dad and there's lots of birthday parties that we got to go to. But I did want to do some prep and some research just in case. Maybe I'll get some time, find out what's the best deck. Unfortunately, I can't really decide. So I thought let's just take a look at what some of the top decks are going to be. So try to prepare, because you're going to be seeing these decks over and over again if you're firing bullets trying to qualify for the Arena Championship. So let's take a look. Of course, number one, reminder, we're at 820 subscribers. When we get to 1,000, we're going to do a giveaway. Still time to join the Elite 1,000. Congrats to all the 820 who have joined. Okay, so Rakdos mid-range. Obviously, we've got to start here. MTG Goldfish puts this at the top of the meta right now. Let's take a look at their list, see what this deck is trying to do, and we'll talk about maybe some decks that can combat it. The deck to beat are obviously Double Duress in the main board, 4 Thought Seizes. Amalia combo was really strong in Explorer. The combo decks, obviously, this Rakdos comes equipped for them. Fatal Pushes coming equipped for the aggro decks, the small creature decks. Bloodtithe Harvester is also good for that. A split between Heartless Act and Go for the Throat for the 2-mana removal. So hedging their bets a little bit on artifact removal. We got 1 Bankbuster. Bankbuster, always a good value. 1 Croxa in this list. Just 2 Graveyard Trespassers. So maybe if you feel like the meta is going to be a little more graveyard dependent, that's something to take a look at. 2 Liliana the Veils. Of course, you stick this on an empty board. That can just be game over. 4 Bone Crusher Giants, so really count this as a 2-drop. Bone Crusher, still great value in 2024 here. Also, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, still great value in, well, I guess it's not legal in Standard, but still great value, would be legal in Standard if it wasn't banned. Shieldred the Apocalypse, we got 3 of those, which is interesting. It is legendary, but you will have to contend with removal. And Bonehorde Drekosaur, so doing a little bit of a split here at the top end between Shieldred and Bonehorde. Let's take a look at the mana base. We're on 25 lands. We got 2 Hive of the Eye Tyrants, 1 Den of the Bugbear. So again, kind of a split, and 2 Mutavaults. So a lot of ways to get around the board wipes. This deck is built and it's ready for control. 2 Swamps, a Takenuma, and a Sokenzen, of course. Pretty good value. 4 Blackleaf Cliffs, so this is your more aggro land here, and your less aggro land, Haunted Ridge, we're at 3 of. Sulphurous Springs, also a more aggro land. Blood Crypt can be aggro. Very interesting. Mid-range is a great description of this deck. It's looking like it's going to try to win in the mid-game before the control decks can take over, deal enough damage, or shut down the aggro decks and beat them after you shut them down. In the sideboard, we got 3 Damping Spheres, which is interesting. We'll maybe talk a little bit more about what that would be used for in the matchups. Path of Peril, another Path of Peril. Invoke Despair is great value. You do have to get a matchup where you can get to those 4 black pips and play it. I mean, almost everything except for Sokenzen and Den the Bugbear here is providing black and Mutavault. So I think it's very possible with the way that this person has constructed their mana base. We got 2 Graph Digger's Cages, 3 Go Blank. So a lot more graveyard hate here in the sideboard compared to just the main deck. Graveyard Trespasser is really all that we're doing. 2 Quakebringers, which is interesting if you need more late game. And then 1, if it doesn't go away here. Why does this keep going away? Console Sovereign Flagship. Well, apparently I can't drop all the way down without it disappearing. But you know what that equipment is. Comes in, deals damage to a creature, I believe. And can deal damage when it attacks. Why is that? Okay. Console. I just had to scroll down. Okay. It's a crew 3, 6/5 flying. Deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls. Rakdos midrange. That's the deck to beat. maybe if leave a comment if you want me to make a video of Rakdos mid-range. We'll kind of try to see what decks are beating it, if nothing else, because it is very popular. I think this will be one that if you're not playing this deck, you're going to try to be building something that's going to compete with it. So let's look at another contender for the throne. Okay, according to MTG Goldfish, number 2 most popular deck in the metagame is it Phoenix? And of course, this is a perennial challenger. It's just been powered up by getting Treasure Cruise added on Arena. So I think a lot of people already have this deck and have it crafted. I think you're going to see this overrepresented. I think, again, this is another good deck to at least prepare for if you're not playing it. Let's take a look at what this deck is offering here. 4 Considers, 4 Opts. Not scared of Bowmaster. I've been playing some Timeless. That's a big difference. 2 Otherworldly Gaze, 4 Sleight of Hand. We're going with 2 Spell Pierces. This is always an interesting decision when you're building a Phoenix deck. How many Spell Pierces you're going to run. You can't really play it proactively to try and get your Phoenixes out. Phoenixes out of the graveyard. 4 of Lightning Axe, of course, very good at dumping your Phoenix in the graveyard. Phoenix, in case you don't know, 3/2 Flying Haste for 4 mana, which is bad rate, but if you cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells, it returns from the graveyard to the battlefield. 1 Torch the Tower, which is interesting. Torch the Tower has the text there at the bottom. If permanent dealt damage by Torch the Tower would die this turn, exile it instead, so good for getting rid of creatures or planeswalkers that can recur, or opposing Phoenixes. If you think the Phoenix is going to be a strong matchup, maybe for the mirror match, you want to have more Torch the Towers equipped. It's good to know. Picklock Prankster, if you haven't played Arclight Phoenix in a while, Picklock Prankster now apparently is in this one. Mostly for the instant Free the Fae, I'm sure. Mill 4 cards, put an instant sorcery or fairy card from among the milled cards into your hand. So good way on 4 mana to get back one of these spells. And so this is an instant combined with playing Opt and then getting it back. You know, it can get your Phoenix back. 4 of Thing in the Ice. I don't have 4 of these. How many do I have? I have 2 of them. I'm out of rare wild cards at the moment, so I wouldn't be playing Thing in the Ice with 4 of if I was playing it this weekend. And then 2 Is It Charms. Is It Charm is now available. Mode, it has the counterspell mode, it has the damage mode, it has the draw and then discard mode. Another great power up for Arclight Phoenix. So I think Arclight Phoenix, it's always a contender. It's always up in the top, near the top in Explorer Pioneer, and with Treasure Cruise and Is It Charm coming to Arena, Arclight Phoenix looks to be very strong to me. In terms of the mana base, this deck list is running only 18 lands here. We got 1 Hall of the Storm Giants, which is great if you get into a late game battle. 2 islands, Odawara and Den of the Bugbear, I guess splitting on the man lands there. 4 Riverglide Pathways, 4 Spire Bluff Canals, 4 Steam Vents, and 1 Stormcarved Coast. So going just down to 1 on the slow lands. Taking a look at the sideboard, we got 2 Disdainful Strokes. We got some Brazen Borrowers, which is interesting, and some Crackling Drakes, which is interesting. So you can do a little bit of a transformational sideboard, it looks like, with this build, where if opponent is boarding out removal, you can bring in a lot of your creatures. 1 Aethergust, 2 Unlicensed Hearse. I think, again, these things that are going to get the graveyard, like Unlicensed Hearse, which exiles up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard, are going to be really critical to have in your sideboard in this in this competition, especially if Arclight Phoenix is very popular, because one of the things that can really shut down Phoenix is these Unlicensed Hearse type cards. 2 Mystical Disputes and 3 Brotherhood's End, which is the 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, or destroy all artifacts with mana value 3 or less. I guess if you run up against an artifact deck, that's a mode not to forget that you have. So it's interesting. We'll take a look at my 3rd deck pick here, but only running 1 Aethergust, that's an interesting choice. Let me know what you think of Phoenix. I have a Phoenix video of Arclight Phoenix post the Expressive Iteration ban, but of course, as we see, we've got Thing in the Ice, we've got Is It Charm, we've got Treasure Cruise has been added to the format since then. So if you guys want an updated Is It Phoenix video, let me know in the comments. I think my Is It Phoenix video, that has been one of my most popular deck gameplay videos. So Is It Phoenix is a really popular one. It's one that brings people back. If people are just coming back for the weekend to play this and try to spike a tournament, this could be a deck that you end up seeing a little bit more of than maybe some people are planning on. So and also an interesting option if that's you and you have this deck and you've been you love to play it and you want to dust off some mothballs. It's a competitive deck for sure. So let's take a look at deck number 3. Okay, so a little bit out of left field for my number 3 pick, but this is a relatively budget deck. Obviously, the mana base, you do have a heavy investment on the lands. For a tournament, I wouldn't really skimp on that, but if you gotta do it, you gotta do it. I mean, if you don't have it, play like, you know, a monocolor deck, mono red burn, mono blue tempo, something like that. If you don't have the lands and the wild cards to craft them. But let's take a look at this Boros Heroic. This deck, this is based on a best of 1 deck that has like a 67% win rate. So I did have to grab the sideboard from a different Boros deck. But I think this deck has a good chance. It's fast, so you can play it really quickly. You can get lucky with it, and that's probably what you're going to need especially if you're firing a lot of bullets to try and qualify. So let's take a look. The main thing we're trying to do is stick an Illuminator Virtuoso. We could also stick, you know, a 10th District Legionnaire or a Favored Hoplite. These are all creatures that are going to grow when we target them with spells. So we have stuff like Defiant Strike that's going to draw us a card. Ancestral Anger is going to draw us a card. That is a sorcery. Monstrous Rage, if you haven't played this deck in a while, Monstrous Rage is real good. It's a 4 of now instantly in the deck. It's essentially a +3/+1 the turn it comes into play, and it's going to leave behind the +1/+1 and the Trample, which is really good. Really good to have instant speed Trample over Ancestral Anger. It doesn't draw you a card. For Reckless Rage, this is a removal spell that's also going to trigger your heroic creatures. So Favorite Hoplite, you can go ahead and target it. It's going to get the +1 counter before the 2 damage hits it, so it'll be safe, at least from that spell. 10th District Legionnaire, same thing. Going to get the +1/+1 counter before it dies. Illuminator Virtuoso, be careful. get it grown enough that and have a guarantee that you can connive in hand before you target your Illuminator Virtuoso with the Reckless Rage. We've also got Monastery Swiftspear because we're casting a ton of spells. God's Willing to protect the super creature that you're building, and Spikefield Hazard can be another possible trigger for the creature or creatures, or it can go against a small creature, or it can go face for that last 1 point of damage. Very interesting. This build is only running 2 Homestead Courage. When I've played heroic decks before, Homestead Courage was kind of an all-star because the flashback ability for only 1 white mana. So getting 2 spell targetings for 1 white mana is pretty good. You know, 1 white mana each is, you know, and in 1 card is pretty good. Dreadhorde Arcanist, these mostly die on sight. Expect this to get fatal pushed, but if you do manage to land it, you just play the best of these spells out of the graveyard when you attack with it. And that's usually 1 attack with Dreadhorde Arcanist is usually enough to close things out. So mana base, only 18 lands here. Plains, Sukenzin, 4 of Battlefield Forge, 4 of Inspiring Vantage, 4 of Needle Verge Pathway, 4 of Sacred Foundry. That's you know, it's kind of all in. You're just trying to get a small creature down early, hopefully protect it with God's Willing. You might look at more protection spells. We saw that Rakdos is going to have a lot of kill spells. They're going to have the fatal pushes. They're going to have, you know, get the Heartless Act and the other Go for the Throat. So they're going to have a lot of cheap kill spells. God's Willing might not be enough. You're going to have to balance your threats. Maybe try to get a couple threats. Make it so that whatever, you know, get the removal out of their hand, then unload on them, possibly. I don't know. So, Rending Volley against blue or white creatures here. I don't know if this is the best choice. I don't think... If my picks for the top decks are true, then really the only creatures Rending Volley is going to hit is going to be these white creatures in this deck. But you never know. It is a pretty effective against blue and white. Good tempo play. Containment Priest. I guess against stuff like the Convoke decks or things, except that's casting. So I guess if you think that, stuff like Breach the Multiverse or Itali or things like that are going to be a factor where people are playing stuff that is not cast. 2 Get Losts, you could probably up the amount of these. Get Lost, pretty solid spell in my experience. We don't care about the map tokens in this deck because we're just trying to win as fast as possible. Forge Devils, it can target a creature. I don't think it would count as casting a spell though, so I don't think any of these guys would be grown by the Forge Devil. But it is a creature, a small creature that can do a ping. It's an interesting sideboard choice that people are using in Boros. I don't know if that's a top pick. Rest in Peace is going to shut down the Phoenix decks, which is pretty good. So, okay, now we can talk about Damping Sphere. So, I really think people are running Damping Sphere in sideboards to deal with like the mono green ramp decks that are just not that good anymore since Karn got banned. So, I really question like Damping Sphere will be good if people are running stuff like Boros Heroic, and I guess it's also going to be good against Phoenix. That second mode, each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. The problem here with running it in this deck here is like it's symmetrical. It may be, obviously you choose when it gets played or not played, but I don't know about this. I'm on the bubble with this. Leave your comments. What do you think about Damping Sphere as a sideboard card? I don't know. Next, we got Redain, God of the Worthy. Again, non-creature spells your opponents cast with mana value 4 or greater cost 2 more to cast, and making snow lands enter tapped. I don't know if there's a good snow deck in the format. I don't think there is at the moment. The Valkmira thing is maybe more relevant if you're going to go to a late game against a deck that's really going wide. Again, I'm not sure why the Boros decks are playing this. I think there might be better sideboard options. Leave your comments. And then we got one of Animpakal. Whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on Animpakal, then create X/1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens. They're attacked and attacking where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Animpakal. Again, this might be a bit slow, but if you can land it and you can protect it, you can grow this pretty big just with your pump spells. And then you're making a ton of gnomes. And then if they kill it after that, that's not a problem. You've got a ton of gnomes. Hopefully you're going to close out the game with the 6 or 7 gnomes that you made, plus the damage that you did with the one big attack. It's worth considering. Again, I don't know if that's the most competitive strategy. I think you probably want cards that are even cheaper. It looks like it's going to be, we know Explorer is a fairly fast format. And of course, people are going to be playing the most competitive stuff. Does that beat Rakdos Sacrifice, Rakdos Midrange, these other decks that are going to be in the format? I don't know. All right, now let's talk about a deck that maybe you shouldn't play. That's right. It's a Malia combo, and I have a lot to say about this. I'm not saying you definitely shouldn't play this. It could be that it's going to line up well, but let me give you some reasons why I was planning to play it and why I'm not planning to play it anymore. First of all, we heard about some of the data, the current data in the metagame. Rakdos midrange is really strong. Phoenix is really strong. Boros Heroic is really strong. The MTG Goldfish is ranking this at deck, level number 3 or number 4 in terms of their rankings. But when I've been playing this deck on the ladder, it went from winning every single game to really struggling to win 50% of the games. And so that to me is a big data point. People are ready for this deck. People know how it functions. They know how to stop it now. It doesn't quite have the same oomph that it had just a week ago, but it's still a really fun deck. And let's talk about it. You're probably going to be facing off against it, even if you're not playing it. So let's talk about it. Talk about how to disrupt it. It has some pretty clever upgrades for best of 3 also. So I put a lot of time into learning this deck, and I haven't made a video of it. So if you'd like to see a video on that, of course, leave a comment. Here's the main thing. The main way that this wins is with comboing off with Amalia Benavides Aguirre. And she's a 2/2 with Ward, pay 3 life, which is always nice. And whenever you gain life, she's going to explore, which means you look at the top card of your library, it's land, put it in your hand. If not, you can keep it on the top of your library, put it in the graveyard. So a little bit of deck manipulation there. Then, when her power is exactly 20, destroy all other creatures. Okay, there is a way to tie the game, but most of the time, you're going to try to have her hit 20 power, instant speed. Uh, well, either instant speed to where she can attack on your turn or on your opponent's turn. And the way to get her in on the opponent's turn is you got 4 of Court of Calling and 4 of Collected Company, which is going to pull her out of the deck and put her on the battlefield. So to combo off, you've really got to also have Wild Growth Walker, and you've got to have some way to gain life or start exploring. So Send Out Scout, it's a 1/1. It comes in, it explores. That's a way to start the chain. Gilded Goose makes a food, which you can actually, instead of using it for mana, you can crack it to gain life. That starts the chain. Lunarch Veteran is probably the best way to start the chain. It's gain life when a creature comes in. Prosperous Innkeeper also has that same effect. So just drop this creature in, have the Wild Growth Walker going on, and you win. Dina can also kind of win with the gain life pings. But of course, you still need the Wild Growth Walker and the Amalia to like perpetuate it. You can just grind people down and not win with the combo. So this deck has a fail mode that's pretty strong. I personally like Extraction Specialist over a lot of people run Return to the Ranks. It is Convoked, but it is sorcery speed. So, if they remove a combo piece or 2 from the... what's nice about this, you can get back 2 combo pieces from the graveyard. But usually people feel safe once they've removed 1 combo piece. And the good thing about Extraction Specialist is you can grab it with Court of Calling or, more importantly, Collected Company hits it. But bring something back from the graveyard, and that's going to get people 4 of Fatal Push in the main deck here. Couple Duresses, a couple Thought Seizes. And what's interesting is because we're running 4 Court of Callings and the Collected Companies, you can build a sideboard that has like utility creatures. So Haywire Might, you can have 1 of Fun Ofs of all these creatures and you can pull them out. And this is what you're going to have to watch out if your opponent is playing this deck. Yeah, their sideboard is like a bunch of 1 of creatures, but the chances of them getting them off Court of Company and Collected Company and Court of Calling are really high, actually. So Deep Cavern Bat is more hand disruption. You could build the deck with a little less hand disruption, knowing that you can pull that Deep Cavern Bat. The problem is it is 2 mana. Being able to hit people with 1 mana hand disruption, I think, is probably more important in some matchups anyway. Dinah, we have already 1 in the main deck, so this is a slot you could probably replace with another utility creature. Remorseful Cleric is great for hitting graveyards as a utility creature. Knight of Dust Shadow shuts down life gain, those life gain angel decks are still going to be floating around. Knight of Dust Shadow will help shut that down. Voice of Resurgence. Whenever opponent casts a spell during your turn, it's going to create creatures. I guess mainly you're going to bring this in against the control decks, but you'll know the decks that want to use it. Archon of Emeria is interesting. This is going to really shut down the Phoenix decks and the Boros Heroic decks. So I think any deck that can sideboard Archon of Emeria, it's definitely one to consider. Skyclave of Apparition. The sideboard I was modeling after had 2 Sentinel of the Nameless City, and I was thinking about that. Why would you do that? This is just a great mid-range card. So it's not your 1 of Fun of. You really, at some matchups, you're going to want to transform into a mid-range matchup. In some, a 3/4 lines up with certain decks very nicely. 3/4 Vigilance and getting those map tokens. So Sentinel of the Nameless City, something to consider. Knight of Autumn as a 2/1. Deck is on 21 lands, so it's pretty low to the ground, this build, trying to hit Amalia. We got a Takenuma. We got a Boseiju. We got 1 Forest. 1 Caves of Koilos. 1 Godless Shrine. 4 Blooming Marshes. 3 Overgrown Tombs. 3 Razor Verge Thickets. 4 Temple Gardens. 1 Cavern of Souls. Pretty much always going to say Vampire. I guess that kind of gives away. You could say Scout. If you think maybe people don't know Amalia, once you say Vampire, they're like, oh yeah, they're trying to protect their Amalia combo. When I play this deck, I run into a lot of problems where I get the Cavern of Souls, and because it's so land light, the deck, I only have like 1 other land, and then like you can't cast Dinah or Jarina or something. Your heavy mana requirement creatures other than Amalia. But I think you pretty much always want to say Vampire or Scout to hit it. I guess you could say Scout because it also gets Cenote Scout. But we can look at the types in the deck: birds, citizens, clerics, dogs, druids, elementals, halflings. Um, Elemental is also a good choice because Wild Growth Walker is another key combo piece. One Scavenging Ooze in the main deck, again, another good shutdown graveyard. Just eat those Arclight Phoenixes, gain some, and it also gains life, which is a nice thing. I guess we didn't talk through the deck as much. We do have Selfless Savior. So I mentioned that you can actually draw the game. This is the way you draw the game with your Selfless Savior, right? With that 20th Amalia hitting 20 on the stack. If you make the Wild Growth Walker indestructible, Amalia will wipe the board, but then just continue gaining, and it will cause the game to draw. There's some very edge cases, but in a competitive situation, you should be aware you want the game to draw. Prosperous Innkeeper is pretty much an all-star because of making that treasure and doing the gain life thing. So Lunarch Veterans, sort of just the gain life copies 5 through 7 of that. Anyways, interesting deck. Correction Specialist, another reason I like it is the life link. That's another way you can start setting off the combo with that life gain. I've definitely won that way. So that is my pick for what is hot right now in Explorer. If you play these decks or you have ideas of how to modify them and make them more competitive, leave a comment. Thanks for joining me here in the attic. Shout out to the 820 people who have joined the Elite First 1000. You guys are great. And this is me reminding you that Magic is a game so fun, even dads can enjoy it. Adios.